Hello everyone, hope you're all doing good. So this is Shankar. Welcome to S3 Soft Global's Apache, Maven and Jenkins series of training videos that I'm planning to do. Today we're going to look at part one, which is a quick introduction to what exactly before even we get into the Apache, Maven or Jenkins, we need to understand something called CICD that the industry is talking about. So CICD stands for continuous integration and continuous deployment. So what is that? So let's try to look at with a clear picture. So typically, whatever the software development methodology that the organization is following, be it waterfall or maybe the agile, obviously most of the industries would have adopted agile by now. And with the rapid expectations from the customers for continuous deployments into their production environments as frequently as could be like on a weekly basis, whereas some companies are actually doing on a daily basis, there is a need arises for this requirement of adapting the continuous integration and continuous deployment. So what exactly it is? Let's take an environment where developers are provided a central repository, things like Git or a GitHub. Let's say you have a central code repository, or I would say version control system, where the developers will maintain the source code. So let's assume there are n number of developers are working on your product for various locations, geographically from different locations. Let's assume they all have given an idea to, or a kind of a recommendation to complete uh, code submissions by around 6 p.m. Let's assume. I mean, this is just the time that I'm throwing it from my side, what exactly we try to follow, but it cannot be the same in every company, whatever actually the works out. A kind of a recommendation or a guideline that, let's say this developer is working on feature one and this developer is working on feature two and say some feature n. So there are n number of developers working on different features from various locations, and whatever the common time that suits for each one of the team, let's say they have suggested 6 p.m. US time, for example, will ensure everybody submits their code. And then once the code is being submitted, there will be a process which will actually compile this code. So it can be a script. Obviously, it's an automated one. So there can be a script which will part of the build, obviously, which will compile the latest code that is being submitted by various developers into the source code system. So it does the compilation of the code, and let's say during the compilation, if any module gets failed. So one thing that happens during the check-in is, and again that I'm going to cover it as part of my Git and GitHub series of trainings, but typically what exactly a version control system recommends is when you actually check in any code, there are certain details that you have to provide. What is this code change that you have done? Against which feature, enhancement, or a bug fix that you have done, and who actually modified this code. So you need to provide a unique comments, and it takes a unique date and timestamp on which date and which time this code has been checked in. So let's say during something compilation fails, then we know who is a developer or a tester. I mean, when I'm trying to cover up everything through a developer, it need not be a development code itself. It could be from the testers. Let's say you maintain your Selenium code also into the repository. Let's say during the compilation, code gets failed. The corresponding developer or tester will be notified by this script. So typically, the build engineer, so or nowadays it's all, you can call it as operations team. It's part of the operations team, because there are certain companies which are adopting the DevOps model. So in this model, again, I'm going to put some series of trainings on DevOps model as well going forward. In case of DevOps, so it comes under the operations team. Let's say it gets failed. if they have really completely adapted the DevOps model, they themselves can go and identify what is the issue and they try to fix it. If not, they will notify the corresponding developer, or if required, they'll make a call and try to explain what went wrong during the compilation. And the developer will come back, provide a fix immediately on the need basis, because when the deployment is not going to happen, basically when the build is not going to happen, deployment is not going to happen. When the deployment is not going to happen, the testing is not going to happen. Then the customers will have an impact. So there is a series of actions which are going to fail in this process of continuous integration pipeline. So what is expected is the corresponding developer has to come back and, or just log in from wherever he is and try to provide the fix so that the compilation process will be done. So the first step is checking in the code into the system, and the second step is actually compiling the code. Now let's say all the bits have been compiled and generating those corresponding executable files or in the form of services, whatever it is. Then the next step that we're going to do is going to deploy onto the required servers. Maybe those servers are on-premise in your organization, or maybe they are in the cloud. So we'll write another set of a script. Again, it's through an automated script, be it a Python script or a Perl script that you're going to do from the operation side. And that's going to deploy onto the required servers. So the deploying your latest bits, deploying latest bits onto, it could be on your DB side, database changes, or it could be on the API side if it is a middle layer changes. So we're going to deploy it onto the required servers. So let's say this is your step 3. And there is a chance, again, something can go wrong while actually deploying. Then again, we are going to contact the corresponding in charge of that development team, or the person who is actually taking care of this database side, maybe the DBA. So we're going to send out again a note. All this which I'm explaining, automatically it's going to happen. Nobody's going to run any of these manually. So DBA will be notified saying, hey, we are not able to deploy these bits onto this particular database server. And here is so there is a clear log will be attached to an email, and email goes to the person, and then he will try to log in and see what is the problem. Let's say this is running out of a space, for example. Then he'll come and try to clear out the space so that the next set of things are unblocked. So that's another step. And let's say when the bits have been deployed onto the middle layer and the database layer, now the testing part comes in. So the testers will be notified, or they would know that, or it's actually this thing is started at 6 p.m. We can schedule it, to say immediately as soon as this job is run this job, and when this job is run this job, and when this particular thing gets successful, then run your automation scripts. For example, there are testers who have developed a Selenium automation code, for example, and they have developed the scripts for various testings. For example, typically this is what we do. We do it for a sanity test. As soon as a new build gets generated, I'll have some set of 35 test cases which are going to run and tell me whether this build is okay or not. So that's more like a smoke or a sanity test. That's one type of test suite that I'm going to maintain. Or you maybe wanted to run the entire regression suite itself, where you have, let's say, 100 and 120 test cases, for example. You wanted to run the regression suite. So this is going to be step 4, where you will automatically kickstart your Selenium tests. We're going to do in all this series of trainings how we're going to do that. So typically we have the continuous integration tools like Jenkin is going to help us a lot in this particular explanation. But before even to look out how we actually work with Jenkins, we're going to see another software called Apache Maven software, which is going to help us. How do you take care of the various dependencies for your files? For example, let's say my developers are writing the code in Java, and then there is a code which is running in Python or a Perl to do these deployments, and then I have my Selenium automations code which is going to do a smoke or a sanity test. But in all these scripts, there are a lot of dependency files, like especially in the world of Java, we're going to maintain a lot of jar files. For example, for my unit test, I'm going to use JUnit by the developer. Let's say being a tester, I have used TestNG for my TestNG automation, or I have used Apache POI jar files for my working with Excel files. So there are n number of jar files that we have, and there are various versions of it is being maintained. So there is a need arises that I need a central location where I'm going to put all these jar files, and if any of the jar file is missing, my software should take care of it from a central repository, which is, we actually call it as a Maven repository. So it's going to take it from the Maven repository and make it available for your test so that your test is never going to fail. So that is what it is going to do, the Apache Maven software, which we're going to look in the part 2, followed by we will create various tests in Apache Maven, and we'll see how developers are going to maintain the code, how testers are going to maintain the code. And then we'll come to this whole implementation of, we call this whole series thing is like a pipeline. Why pipeline? Because I have a series of actions which are going to be triggered automatically. Let's say for my step 2, step 1 is a prerequisite. Unless step 1 succeeds, step 2 is not going to run. And when step 2 runs successfully, step 3 is going to run. So like this, we are going to put all these things in a pipeline. So as part of step 4, we are going to kick off the Selenium tests on the application which you're planning to test it. So that's going to run. Again, it's going to be a Jenkin job that I'm going to schedule. All these things are Jenkin jobs rather. So it's going to schedule and then run your smoked or regression test and then notify all your stakeholders, maybe your testing team, development team, project management team, and the customers team saying, hey, smoke test is successfully completed and here are the results for test case 1, 2, 3, how detailed the report that you're going to generate. Depending on the framework that you're actually using. Maybe you're using TestNG, which is going to by default generate a .html report that everybody can see, or maybe you're developed your own framework as part of your hybrid framework, or a page object model framework, or a data-driven framework, or maybe you're using the robot framework, which is actually going to detail out uh, report. So that report is going to tell all the stakeholders that, hey, today's build, whatever the build, let's say it's 1.9 X some number, is being deployed onto the server successfully, smoke test is being done, so it's kind of ready for user acceptance testing. So then your users are going to start user acceptance testing. Again, they can create, nowadays you can expect users also uh, uh, moving from non-technical to a bit of technical, either creating their automation scripts, because they are also going to repeat the testing again and again and again for every not every day almost, not just for every build, which is previously used to be a week. So, in order to make their life easy, also they are creating automation scripts, and with the help of frameworks available like robot framework or acceptance-driven development kind of a model, it's very easy for. Or suppose you develop a keyword-driven framework and you have just given various keywords, and they can automate it. Let's say so their job is going to run again. So that also being scheduled in the Jenkins, and that's going to run after the step 4, and that's going to tell us, hey, we have done with our user acceptance testing as well, and it's ready for production deployment. Then there will be a team who will actually go deploy it into production. So now if you see all these series of steps that I'm talking about, a lot of companies who are in, for example, in case of, if you name some of the big companies like Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, they need daily deployments. In fact, there are certain features, they are going to adopt a methodology of doing the testing in production directly. We call it as TIP, testing in production. So now, if not that, but until to go into production, there are series of actions that needs to happen on a daily basis. And if you would expect the people to do it on a manual way, it's a very cumbersome process and it's very time consuming, and it cannot really have a hand-in-hand coordination for all the different teams. So that is where we're going to use this process of continuous integration, continuous deployment. And here I have just explained about with only one testing environment, but in some companies, you might have a series of testing environments like integration testing environment, system testing environment, then you actually go for UAT environment. So what happens is if any one of these steps fail, the further steps are not going to continue. Of course, you can configure it whether to continue or not continue, but ideal expectation is only when it gets successful we should continue. So hope you all have got a fair idea of what exactly this continuous integration, continuous deployment is all about that I'm talking. So that's all for now. And probably, the next session, which I'm going to do part two, I'm going to talk about what is this Apache Maven software is all about and how do you create your tests with Maven software so that we can actually look at this complete thing as an implementation, right? So we'll see integrating Maven tests with Eclipse and all that in the part two. All right, so if you have any questions or if you're looking for, let me just erase this stuff. So if you're looking for any, I don't know, if you have any questions or if you're looking for a detailed trainings on any of these things, you can reach out to me, Shankar, s3softglobal@gmail.com for the detailed information on whether it is related to Cilian WebDriver, framework development, Jenkins, Git and GitHub, or related to experience on TDD, ATDD, BDD that the industry is talking about. Or it could be the classic, you may be just starting with a QA and then you wanted to know how exactly QA manual testing happens. Or you wanted to just learn some test management tool like Jira, HPLM. You can always reach out to us, Shankar at s3softglobal.com. All right, that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching this video. Have a good day.